And for those who want to do more to help your neighbors and earn some extra cash, you too can become an emergency snow shoveler. Just show up at your local sanitation garage between 8 a.m. and 1 p.m. tomorrow with your paperwork, which is accessible online.
Quote, "This is Jim Snow 2.0. So, about that paperwork. Well, let's look into it. We got to check in with Zohran Mamdani, the new far-left democratic socialist or communist, depending which of his prior statements you're evaluating, the new mayor of New York City, who is, of course, taking charge and already facing some very serious challenges, which is, daunting, but any mayor can, but he's been hit with them perhaps harder and sooner than I expected. So like massive winter weather issues, and we talked about this, the whole issue with homeless people, and he didn't perform the sweeps, and many of them froze to death on the streets, and so we discussed that. But there's another drama going down with Zohran that I find kind of hilarious, I'm not going to lie, where he is trying to recruit people to volunteer as snow shovelers, emergency snow shovelers, sorry, and it's not volunteering, it's a paid opportunity by the city for like temporary work, and requiring an insane amount of IDs and verifications, even though, of course, the Democratic Socialist left insists that concepts like voter ID are inherently racist and discriminatory. Anyway, he's of course being roasted for this, but here, and we'll get into all the details, but first here's the clip of him making this announcement, and then I will kind of explain Zohran's side of it as well, because his hands may be tied to some extent here, but listen to this.
We're utilizing 33 DSNY vans and 2 DSNY buses to transport shovelers where they're needed, faster. And for those who want to do more to help your neighbors and earn some extra cash, you too can become an emergency snow shoveler. Just show up at your local sanitation garage between 8 a.m. and 1 p.m. tomorrow with your paperwork, which is accessible online at nyc.gov/snow, and you can get started right away.
So, about that paperwork. Well, let's look into it. Here's the headline from Mediaite. Zohran Mamdani gets ruthlessly mocked for requiring 5 forms of ID to be an emergency snow shoveler. Quote, "This is Jim Snow 2.0. The Democratic Socialists of America believe voter identification laws are quote-unquote racist, but DSA comrade and New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani wants you to provide a grip of IDs to have the honor of being an emergency snow shoveler. How many IDs are we talking about? 5 to be exact. The New York City website for aspirational shovelers asks for the following documents on its application page: 2 small photos, 2 original forms of ID plus copies, and a social security card. That seems like a lot, but again, shovelers who get hired make up to $28.71 an hour. His government's requests for multiple forms of ID stands out, though, considering the DSA, which he's a member, has opposed voter ID. That issue has gained more attention of late, as Trump and other Republicans have backed the SAVE Act, which would require proof of American citizenship to vote. Let's read from the DSA's website here. Our candidates for office stand firm against racist voter ID laws and secret poll taxes like the Save America Act. Right now, our socialists in office are working to build a society that works for everyone. In our chapters, we continue to educate working class voters about the needless complications in our electoral system, from party registration dates to laws like these. So, yeah, are they going to call Zohran Mamdani out for his apparent racism? Now, in reality, I don't think any of this is racist. I think it's absurd. I think it's basically common sense to require an ID when you are voting. And I don't accept the idea or the notion that Black people or different minorities are somehow not capable of getting IDs. And I actually find that like vaguely racist itself as a form of pushback to these policies, but it's just funny, right? And it to some extent, I think Zohran has his hands tied. He has to pay these people as official city government employees, and there's lots of like laws they have to comply with to do that require them to be verified and to have identification. So Zohran's not necessarily choosing to do this. So I'm not sure that he's actually being hypocritical. It's more so that just like watching the utopian, just like out of touch with reality nature of the DSA ideology run into so many like just blatant roadblocks and debunk itself in real time when you are actually put in a position of power or authority for once. So I'm sure Zohran, back in his days where he was hanging out with the DSA and just like tweeting quotes from the Communist Manifesto, would have totally agreed. IDs are so racist. Having minorities show identification is like a poll tax. Like, totally, bro, we're going to do restorative justice and take this all down. And then he's in office and they need people to shovel snow. And so he's like, well, we got to do this. And I guess we got to get IDs. All right. And then people provided IDs, and I doubt it was that big of a deal. Now, the requirements do seem a little excessive, and that's where this comes in. So he was asked about this contradiction of sorts, and he did say that this was required by law, which I think is a fair point. So he didn't have much discretion here, but listen to this response from Zohran.
There's been this controversy over the snow laborers and the sort of what some see as onerous need to have documentation. Can you just talk about if that's new and what you make of the controversy?
This is all long-standing. This is a long-standing program and long-standing requirements, and this is a way that New Yorkers get paid to shovel snow in assistance with the city's response to a winter storm event. Federal law requires that employers get authorization and documentation to pay people for their work. We are not allowed to just cut checks to individuals for their work. And these are the policies that we've had in place, but I understand that for many, it's the first time that they've ever heard about it.
So listen, fair enough to Zohran on this one. What he's saying is obviously true. It's not like the city government could just hand out bags of cash to people who are, showing up to shovel snow for the day. They do have to process them in a system that I'm sure is regulated and required by law to get different forms of ID. Though I think what they're asking for with all the additional photos and everything may be excessive. And that was pointed out by journalist Ryan Grimm, who is a very left wing. And he wrote, okay, but federal law allows much more wiggle room than these city requirements, particularly the demand for 2 passport-sized photos. That feels like something those little photo shops got a mayor to agree to many years ago, probably with a little skin greasing to get it through. So maybe Zohran had some wiggle room to not require quite as much, but he couldn't just let people show up and pay them without IDs or verification for shoveling snow. That wasn't really an option. So to call him like a total hypocrite from this would not be fair. It's more so just like funny to me how they can run on and be ensconced in these ideological circles that view something as racist and structurally oppressive. And then once they actually get into power, they realize it's like, well, I guess we kind of do this act anyway, and it's really not that big a deal and didn't cause a ton of problems. So, and it is just hilarious that they're arguing you shouldn't have to show an ID to vote, but you do have to show one to shovel snow. Like, that is obviously a much less pressing concern that people are going to secretly, like, I don't know what, try to shovel snow when they're not actually snow shovelers. Like, that's the whole point. There's really no downside to people shoveling snow without an ID. Now, again, it makes sense that they have to process the payments, so they need to be registered. But whereas obviously, if you allowed people to, there would be some forms of election fraud or interference or people wanting to sway things or being paid to or in different ways. And so it's like, how are you going to stand on voter ID as racist if you've just successfully implemented, without too many hiccups and without doing any racism, snow shovel or ID? That's the contradiction here that I would like to ask. Is the mayor now ready to recant his position on voter ID and reject the Democratic Socialists of America and their utopian nonsense? I won't hold my breath waiting for him to come to that realization, or at least admit it out loud, because I'd probably pass out. But that's why I found this story funny and also slightly insightful, though it's really not that deep, not like the snow that's burying a lot of the country, but not me here in Miami, where I laid out at the pool in 84 degrees yesterday. So sucks to suck, folks. And that'll be it for sorry about that. That was a little mean. So that'll be it for today's episode of the Brad versus Everyone podcast. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and we will talk again real soon.